Hello everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Through the Pages, my book review show. Got a doozy for you today. Stitching a Revolution by Cleve Jones with Jeff Dawson. Longtime viewers of the show will remember me raving about this book right here by Cleve Jones, which was pretty much a straight up like memoir. This had a memoir element to it. There was a lot of crossover in the two books, but this one was decidedly about the AIDS Memorial. But it would be incomplete to tell it without Cleve's whole story, essentially, to show why he's in that. Not just that he's a gay man and AIDS crisis means a lot to him, that how he got to be at the forefront of that and at the helm of such a vital ship for that community in the world, honestly. So it touches on his time with Harvey Milk, but I think just like in Stitching a Revolution, he balanced it the right way. In that's certainly an important era, but Harvey Milk didn't define Cleve Jones. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because even as I had bought that book and hadn't read it yet, I was like, this guy was with Cleve Jones, and I always loved the movie Milk, and I like everything about that, and then Cleve Jones, and I was like, awesome, this is more into that story, but it's like, this is its own story that just was happening at the same time. And so Harvey didn't live to see the AIDS crisis. He was murdered right before it, and it just makes me think of the amount of despair that would be in that community, and he conveys it well here. It makes me think of almost like people talk about 60s being the most love-filled time. It's early 60s, but then you had Robert Kennedy murdered, JFK, MLK, Martin Luther, Malcolm X, so much spiraled down. And so that's what I almost feel like on this. You see Harvey Milk breaking into the zeitgeist in a way, and thinking that's the domino that has toppled this now. And now we're rolling, and then to have him executed, and then the AIDS crisis, and then politicians turn a blind eye to it. And that's what I never had such a full grasp of. I learned way more in this book about American history than I did in When We Rise, which is to be expected, but even though it narrows in on one kind of element of history at that time, I don't know, it felt like a lot was packed in there. So this sort of breaks the left-right, Democrat-Republican paradigm. It shows that it doesn't matter who was in office. It was just about capturing the Christian vote. So they're not going to speak openly about it. They're not going to speak on their heart about it. And it's shameful. They tell the story in this, try not to ever give spoilers or ruin anything, but I feel like you understand the AIDS Memorial Quilt exists. That's not a spoiler, me telling you kind of what they do with it here. So this quilt began, and at one point I was just completely struck by the fact that it weighed 7,000 pounds. And then I realized how early that was in the story, and it just got bigger and bigger. But this massive collection of quilts seamed together would be rolled out in Washington, D.C., and I believe it was George H.W. Bush was the one in office. First time they roll it out, I think at the Washington Monument is shown on the cover. I'm trying to think of the name of that lawn. I think I'm going to butcher the proper noun of it, but roll it out, and they can hear a helicopter, and it's president going the other direction. Just cowardice. And everyone knew that this virus or this disease was killing people like crazy, and that the government basically said it's affecting gay people Why would that have to come to my doorstep? You know, why? I'm it, I'm here to get the votes of Christians with family values, that bullshit term that means nothing, that gets thrown around so much. And it was, I want to say, 7 years before a president said the word AIDS. And I just can't imagine if we watched something like COVID go now, but it was sequestered to a community that they didn't care about. And 7 years of watching this. And it was this quilt that really turned the tides. Now there's a symphony of other activism happening at the same time, but truly it was the Clintons that were in office, came by when it was rolled out. They thought he was going to skip it again and we'll never get the president to come and do this, and I'm not here to be a massive defender of the Clintons by any stretch, but like they walked around, Cleve walked with them, and it was just a riveting story on that in particular. I think any of these like history stories where you're like, that's the real deal. That's what happened. That's not journalism from afar on what they think happened. That's him walking around the AIDS Memorial with the sitting president and the first lady and seeing the impact, and seeing Bill Clinton walk up on a quilt, which every quilt was a memorial to one person, was to a man he used to jog with that died from AIDS. And he got to be there at that impact and was thoughtful in his words and got the message conveyed that we need research. We need a cure. It can be done, but the funding is being blocked. We're saying that this is a disease of deviance. We're saying all this bullshit. We need help, and it clicked at that point. Treatments were available, but they would cost 5 or 6 figures. Obviously out of, like, almost a joke to have that available. And the tides began to turn after that. It's a story about activism and organizing, and it's something that I think every keyboard warrior, something I fall into myself, can take a strong lesson from. That these physical, real-world impacts succeed. And it's something that I feel like the internet has squashed. That, well, I'm doing this. Why would we need to do that? We don't need to all get in a room together. We're connected online all the time. Organizing is how everything has changed. And we don't do it anymore. And so this book was beautiful. It had me crying. It was just staggering. I feel like, obviously going through 13 years of Catholic school, this is not history I was ever taught. And it makes me sad. This is American history. Like, just like slavery or anything is a part of it, I'm not saying that all American history is bad, every facet of American culture is evil. Like, that's not what this is. It's just saying we turn a blind eye to our bad parts so that we can perpetuate American exceptionalism. But in a lot of ways, how like England set the tone for early America, America sets the tone for the culture of the globe. And when our government holds it back, it's more than just issues within our borders that are affected. Everyone takes note as America shifts culturally. And what this quilt did, this collective activism, helped the planet. And the stories in it are wonderfully articulated. There are so many people that I never knew were so involved in the movement. Even, like Nancy Pelosi was huge in it. And it's, say what you will about her, and everyone changes. This is a decades-old version of her. But Whoopi Goldberg, another one who was huge in it and really making things happen. Like, so to see names pop up consistently, people going out on a limb when standing up for gay people was not good. It meant you had all these Christian organizations and people that would say, oh, You're on our other side. We're not with you. It's baffling to me that an issue like this could be so divisive, but then I look at our culture today and it's understandable. And I have a strong faith in God, but sometimes I feel like religion does more harm than good culturally. And I know that's kind of a dicey one to say, but it keeps coming up that it's the source of so much ills in our society where no one can ever be right about it. But we all, if you have a faith in any religion, like, you believe in very similar core tenets. But we get tripped up on the rules and the cultural practices, and then it gets so heated. And this is an instance where coming at it from a calm, scientific view is what the world needed. And so I think sometimes when I see in political debates, people say, this is a Christian nation, or really coming from the side of religion, I feel it feels gross. And I'm so thankful that this quilt was as effective as it was. I hope Cleve Jones writes another book. I, for some reason, don't imagine he will, but read both of these books. Honestly, this is probably the more important one to read. This one, I loved every bit of it, but this hit harder, I would say. Yeah, Stitching Revolution definitely in my top 10 nonfiction books this year, probably in top 5, one of the best. It knocked my socks off. There's a lot of books that I say, like, I suggest reading it. Like, that's an important story to understand. And if the AIDS Memorial Quilt doesn't mean a lot to you right now, put that book on your list.